Maya Reed sat frozen in her office, watching the financial news ticker crawl across the screen as numbers plummeted into red. Her fintech dream, built over sleepless nights, was unraveling faster than she could comprehend. Victor Hale, her business partner, stood in the shadows of her mind like a vulture, and she whispered, "He used my idea to build his empire while I was blind." The betrayal spread through her chest like wildfire, leaving behind a suffocating silence. Her phone rang with relentless urgency, investors demanding answers, creditors circling like sharks. Every second of hesitation carved deeper into her soul. She tightened her fists, muttering, "I won't let him bury me alive." The air in the room felt heavy, like the weight of collapsed markets crushing her lungs. Outside, rain lashed against the windows, each drop echoing the rhythm of her collapsing trust. She had believed Victor was her ally, but tonight she realized he was the architect of her ruin. Morning came heavy with exhaustion. Maya Reed dragged herself to a boardroom filled with skeptical investors who stared at her like predators circling prey. Every word they spoke was coated with disdain, questions fired like bullets she couldn't dodge. She said, "Victor promised us stability, yet here we are drowning." A gray-haired investor sneered, "We trusted you, not him." The shame burned hotter than the coffee untouched beside her. She tightened her jaw, unwilling to let tears show. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, cold and merciless. She wanted to scream that her idea had been stolen, twisted into a dagger pointed at her heart. Instead, she swallowed silence like poison. The meeting became a trial, her seat the witness box, their eyes the jury. She whispered inside, "I will not break here, not yet." Back in her office, Maya scrolled through endless emails of panic. Vendors demanded payments, employees begged for reassurance. She typed responses with numb fingers, but truth tasted bitter in her mouth. She muttered, "Victor gutted us from the inside." Each word felt like a confession to herself. Memories of brainstorming sessions with him flooded back, his false encouragement now exposed as manipulation. The rain had stopped outside, leaving streets slick with betrayal. Her reflection in the darkened monitor stared back, a stranger carrying failure's weight. A single notification ping echoed loud, a legal notice filed against her name. Her chest tightened as she whispered, "He's not just stealing my idea, he's stealing my future." That evening, Nina Patel stormed into Maya's office, eyes fierce with worry. "You can't shoulder this alone," she snapped, pacing across the carpet. Maya forced a bitter laugh. "Do you think anyone else cares? They're all waiting for me to fall." Nina's loyalty was sharp, but powerless against the tidal wave. She slammed her hand on the desk, voice cracking. "Victor betrayed you, not them. Fight back before he buries everything." Silence stretched between them, heavy with desperation. Maya leaned back, closing her eyes, feeling the storm rebuild inside. She wanted hope, but all she found was exhaustion. Night crept in with suffocating quiet. Maya stood alone by the window, gazing at the city below glowing in artificial calm. She whispered, "They don't know their empire stands on my ashes." In her chest, anger battled despair, each breath a choice between collapse and vengeance. Lightning flickered faintly in the distance, as if the storm hadn't left her side. She pressed her forehead against the glass, cold seeping into her bones, yet her eyes burned with defiance. In that silence, she made a vow not to vanish. Victor Hale might have stolen her idea, but he hadn't yet taken her fight. The fallout spread like wildfire. Maya Reed sat in a conference room filled with silent employees, their faces pale with fear. She tried to hold their attention, but words turned heavy in her throat. One young analyst whispered, "Are we still getting paid?" She forced herself to answer, "We will fight to keep this alive." The lie scratched her tongue like glass. Her chest tightened under the weight of expectation, each gaze a reminder of the crumbling foundation. The air smelled of burnt coffee and despair, fluorescent lights humming like a funeral march. She clenched her fists under the table, whispering inwardly, "Victor Hale may have stolen my idea, but he won't steal my will." Yet, She felt the loyalty in the room slipping, like sand between her fingers. The storm outside had cleared, but chaos brewed within. Maya stared at a stack of unpaid bills spread across her desk, ink smearing under trembling fingers. She muttered, "Every dollar is a rope tightening around my neck." Her assistant burst in, holding another notice. "It's from the bank," he said, voice unsteady. Maya swallowed hard, her throat dry. The notice confirmed foreclosure, unless immediate payment was made. She thought of sleepless nights building her company from scraps, only to watch Victor Hale tear it down in days. Anger lit her chest, but despair shadowed her eyes. She whispered, "He wants me broken, but I will not hand him the pieces." At dusk, Maya confronted Victor Hale in a crowded rooftop bar. The skyline burned orange behind them as laughter from strangers clashed with her fury. She demanded, "Why did you steal what we built together?" Victor sipped his drink casually, eyes cold. He smirked, "Because you were too naive to see the real game." The cruelty in his tone stabbed sharper than knives. Patrons around them continued their chatter, oblivious to the war unfolding in plain sight. Maya's heart pounded as her nails dug into the wooden table. She hissed, "This isn't over." Victor leaned closer, whispering, "It already is." The fallout reached her home that night. Bills lay unopened on the kitchen table, their presence louder than silence. Maya's mother, Eleanor Reed, placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder and whispered, "You look just like your father did when the factory closed." Maya stiffened, fighting back tears. She said, "I can't let them see me break." Eleanor's weary eyes softened. "Strength doesn't mean silence," she replied. The kitchen clock ticked steadily, mocking the weight of unpaid hours. Maya hugged her mother tightly, silently praying she could still salvage her future before everything collapsed. The next morning, Maya stood before a half-empty office, rows of vacant chairs screaming louder than voices. Layoffs had gutted her team, and those who remained avoided her eyes. She whispered under her breath, "This is what he wanted, me alone." She walked slowly between the desks, her heels echoing like gunshots. One employee quietly packed belongings into a box, tears slipping down her face. Maya's heart cracked at the sight, but she forced herself to keep walking. She thought, "I can't crumble here. If I do, we all fall." The office that once buzzed with ambition was now a graveyard of dreams. Maya Reed sat across from Daniel Cross, the investor whose reputation for ruthless deals stretched across the city. His office tower loomed above the skyline, its glass walls reflecting power and greed. Daniel tapped his pen against the desk, smirking. "You want money, Maya? Then give me control." Her stomach twisted, but she forced her voice steady. "I built this company. I won't let another man own me." His eyes glittered with amusement, like a predator toying with prey. He leaned forward, whispering, "Survival costs more than pride." The words stung, but desperation clawed at her resolve. She thought, without his capital, there's no company left to save. Later that night, Maya met Nina Patel at a quiet diner on the edge of the city. The neon lights buzzed faintly outside, casting soft pink reflections on the window. Nina slammed her hand on the table, saying, "You can't sell yourself out to Daniel." Maya sighed, her shoulders slumped. "Then what choice do I have? The walls are closing in." The waitress poured coffee they wouldn't drink, the steam curling like fading hope. Nina leaned closer, voice low. "We'll find another way. Don't give him the keys to your future." Maya's lips tightened as she whispered, "Another way better show up soon." The following morning, Maya stood before a whiteboard covered in desperate financial plans. Her team of 3 loyal employees watched nervously as she sketched arrows and numbers with frantic energy. She forced confidence into her voice. "If we tighten expenses and pivot the product, we still have a chance." One young man asked, "And if we fail?" She paused, marker trembling before saying, "Then we fail fighting." The silence that followed was heavy, but determination flickered in their eyes. Maya clung to that spark, whispering inside, "They need my strength, even when I don't feel it." That evening, Victor Hale appeared on the front page of a financial magazine, hailed as a visionary. Maya saw the glossy cover at a newsstand, rage boiling in her veins. She muttered, "They praise the thief while I'm drowning." A passerby recognized her face, whispering, "Isn't that the failed founder?" The words struck like knives. She grabbed the magazine, ripping it in half, her breath ragged. The city bustled around her, oblivious to her collapse. She thought, he may own the headlines now, but I'll own the truth. The night air pressed cold against her skin, pushing her forward through humiliation. Back at her apartment, Maya stared at the wall of sticky notes covering her desk, every one a desperate idea to salvage her dream. Bills piled beside them, casting long shadows in lamplight. She whispered, "I can't outspend him, but maybe I can outthink him." Sleep-deprived and trembling, she scribbled strategies until ink smudged her hands. The silence felt suffocating, yet it carried a fragile rhythm of resilience. Her reflection in the window looked like a stranger, but in her eyes flickered defiance. She muttered, "Victor Hale will regret underestimating me." The courtroom buzzed with tension as Maya Reed faced Victor Hale across the polished wood table. Reporters whispered, their pens ready to etch every downfall. Maya clutched the evidence, palms damp with sweat. She spoke firmly, "You stole my idea and you buried it in fraud." Victor smirked, his voice smooth as oil. "Business is survival, Maya. You were too weak to win." Her jaw clenched, the air around them electric with anger and humiliation. The judge's gavel struck, demanding order, but Maya's pulse refused calm. She whispered inside, "This isn't just survival anymore. It's war." That evening, Maya collapsed into her apartment, exhaustion pressing like lead. Bills, notices, and news clippings littered the floor, drowning her in failures. She pressed her forehead against the wall, whispering, "I can't hold this together anymore." Tears blurred her vision, but rage flickered beneath the grief. A voice inside mocked her weakness, asking, "What's left to fight for?" She slammed her fist against the desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the empty room. Breath ragged, she hissed, "He won't take the last of me." Yet doubt curled in the shadows, whispering that she was already broken. Nina Patel found Maya pacing the office like a caged animal, eyes wild, hair unkempt. "You're burning out," Nina warned, voice sharp. Maya snapped, "I can't stop, not now." Her friend's face softened, worry etched deep. "Then you'll lose yourself before you win anything." Maya froze, her chest heaving. For a moment, silence drowned them both, broken only by the hum of a failing light above. She whispered, "If I stop now, he wins forever." Nina placed a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "Then let me help carry it." The fragile bond between them held Maya upright, barely. Desperation pushed Maya into a high-stakes gamble. She wired the last of her savings into a volatile deal, watching the numbers flicker on her laptop. Her pulse thundered with every refresh. She whispered, "This has to work." The market dipped, clawing at her resolve, then spiked slightly, teasing hope. Sweat dripped down her temple as hours dragged into eternity. Nina sat nearby, silent, watching her friend risk everything. Maya muttered, "One chance. That's all I have." The screen glowed against her haunted face, a roulette wheel of fortune and ruin. The gamble ended in silence. Maya stared at the screen as numbers plummeted, her last hope dissolving in red. Her body went numb, heart pounding like a war drum. She whispered, "It's gone." Nina rushed to her side, gripping her arm. "Maya, we'll find another way." But the words felt hollow against the crushing weight of loss. Maya's reflection glowed in the screen, eyes hollow, face pale. For the first time, she felt truly broken. Yet in that void, a spark whispered faintly, "If he thinks I'm finished, he's wrong." Even shattered, her fight refused extinction. The emergency session began with the hiss of the boardroom doors and the click of cameras outside the glass. Maya Reed set Samuel Grant's files on the long table and felt the room's pulse sharpen. Victor Hale watched from the head seat, pupils flat as stone. Daniel Cross lounged near the window, amused by the scent of blood and leverage. A compliance officer cleared her throat and asked for clarity. Maya said, "The patents are mine, and the revenues were built on forged disclosures." Victor's smile thinned to a blade. He said, "You confuse ambition with crime." Samuel's voice shook as he added details of shadow, invoices and layered shells. The runes shifted with every number he named and every date he nailed. Daniel tapped a finger to the tabletop like a metronome for the fall. Richard Cole stared through Victor and finally spoke. Richard said, "You hid risk inside trust and called it vision." The lights hummed as if they were listening for a verdict. Maya felt fear, yes, but under it burned a clean and terrible calm. She said, "Either this room cleanse itself, or the world will do it for you." They moved to a private lounge that smelled of leather and cold victory. The city smoldered beyond the glass like a living ticker. Daniel Cross poured 2 drinks and let silence grind. Daniel said, "You have dynamite, Maya, but I sell the match." She refused the glass and kept her hands free for truth. Maya said, "You can back the exposure or stand in front of it." He laughed softly and enjoyed the echo. Daniel said, "I could bury him and own you, or spare him and still own you." She felt the old panic rise and then pass like a bad tide. Maya said, "A dead man's switch goes public at dawn unless I cancel." His eyes brightened with the heat of risk. Daniel said, "You finally speak my language." She stepped closer, steady as a scalpel. Maya said, "Then learn my accent, because I keep the company." He weighed greed against consequence and found the sum unfamiliar. By morning, the courthouse steps were a sea of microphones and restless hope. Inside, the injunction hearing unfolded in clipped sentences and surgical evidence. The judge asked for clarity on ownership and deceit. Maya said, "We filed the architecture first, and he laundered it through shells." Victor's counsel objected and wore the objection like cologne. Samuel detailed the ledger trails with a steadier voice than the night before. The clerk projected contracts that sweated when light hit them. Richard Cole leaned on his cane and let silence frame his words. Richard said, "Patterns are fingerprints, and his are all over the cash flow." Victor stared ahead as if the wall held salvation. The judge's pen scratched a slow drumbeat of doubt. Maya felt the building tilt toward consequence. She said, "This is not a feud. It is a correction." The room breathed out like a market closing on truth. Oh, truth. At noon, Maya faced the press with the city roaring beneath the podium. Reporters flared like flashbulbs in human form. She felt the fear, and then she named it out loud by speaking past it. Maya said, "Innovation without integrity is theft with better branding." The sentence cut the air and kept going. She outlined the timeline, the filings, and the falsified disclosures. Nina Patel stood at her flank and steadied the wind with presence. Victor's team tried to seed doubt and missed the soil. Daniel watched from the crowd and measured the angles of power. He was not sentimental, but he respected gravity. Maya said, "Employees lost savings and customers lost trust." The words landed with the weight of wages. She added, "Accountability is not revenge. It is repair." The cameras drank every syllable and asked for more. She felt the city lean closer as if truth were finally audible. By dusk the board of Hale's company gathered for a vote that tasted like iron. The table was a ring where fortunes jewel without bruises. Victor tried to command the room with the voice that once bought applause. Victor said, "Panic is not policy, and loyalty is strategy." The directors shifted like chess pieces that had learned to walk. Daniel arrived late and let the door close like a verdict. He nodded toward Maya and set his folder down. Daniel said, "Risk has changed its price, and I am not paying yours." The air buckled as momentum flipped. Maya said, "Return the patents, pay restitution, and step aside." Victor laughed, but the laugh had no ceiling. A director cleared his throat and called the motion. Pens moved. Eyes didn't. The Count marched across the table like boots on wet concrete. Victor's smile cracked where numbers refused to bend. Maya did not exhale. She held the moment still for history. Morning broke with a gray calm as the ruling landed like a clean cut through noise. The court recognized Maya Reed's ownership and froze Victor Hale's assets pending restitution. Reporters swarmed the steps, hungry for ruin and rebirth. Maya said, "This decision belongs to everyone who refused to look away." Victor stared ahead, jaw locked, as if the horizon might rewrite the law. Daniel Cross kept to the shadows, calculating the new price of power. Samuel Grant exhaled a breath that had lived in his chest for years. Richard Cole smiled without warmth. He said, "Corrections are expensive, but they clear the ledger." Maya felt the weight of victory settle, not light, but true. By noon, the company gathered in a stripped-down auditorium that still remembered better days. Rows of weary faces waited for a map back to meaning. Maya said, "I failed to shield you, but I will not fail to rebuild with you." A quiet spread through the room like light over water. She outlined returning patents, restoring payroll, and honoring contracts that greed tried to smother. Nina Patel stood beside her, steady as a rail in rough weather. An engineer asked if trust could be repaired. Maya said, "Trust returns when promises keep time." Applause rose cautious and grateful. For the first time in months, the air felt breathable. Afternoon shadows stretched across Daniel Cross' office as contracts waited like coiled ideas. He lifted a pen and eyed the clauses that honored control without theft. Daniel said, "I invest under terms that bite both ways." Maya nodded and did not blink. She said, "Then they bite me first." Richard Cole leaned on the window frame, a weathered witness to smarter deals. He said, "Guardrails keep cars and souls alive." Samuel confirmed whistleblower protections and compliance audits that would outlive fashion. Maya signed last, the ink drying into a boundary she could keep. Daniel said, "Then let's build for profit and daylight." She answered, "Daylight or nothing." Evening brought restitution meetings that mattered more than headlines. In a modest conference room, refunds were issued, and apologies were spoken with full sentences. Omer employee named Lena Ward accepted a check with shaking hands. She said, "I didn't think anyone would make this right." Maya answered, "Right is slower than wrong, but it arrives." Nina documented agreements for vendors who had floated faith across months of dark water. Samuel watched records update like wounds closing. Richard reviewed the final terms and nodded once. The work was unglamorous and exact. It felt like rebuilding the floor while standing on it, and still it held. Night returned with a clear sky and a city that hummed like a living circuit. Maya stood on the rooftop, where the wind wrote its own contracts. Victor Hale appeared in silence, the distance between them measured in choices. He said, "You won the crowd." She said, "I won the truth." He searched her face for softness and found stone. Victor said, "You could have ended me louder." She answered, "Justice is loud enough." He looked at the skyline that no longer admired him. She said, "You can steal a blueprint, not the builder." He left without a word. Maya faced the wind and felt the future click into gear, not painless, but possible. The whistleblower stepped from the shadows that night, his voice low but urgent. Samuel Grant, a mid-level accountant in Victor Hale's empire, met Maya Reed in a deserted parking garage. His hands trembled as he handed her a folder. "They've been falsifying numbers for years," he whispered. Maya's breath caught as she flipped through spreadsheets and contracts riddled with deception. Her pulse thundered. "This could bury him," she said. Samuel's eyes darted nervously. "It could bury you too if he finds out." The echo of footsteps and distant traffic amplified the tension. Maya thought, "The truth is darker than I imagined." Back in her office, Maya spread Samuel's documents across her desk, the evidence glowing under her lamp. She whispered, "He built his empire on fraud." Her heart raced as she saw her stolen idea buried beneath shell companies and forged signatures. Rage boiled, but fear lurked close behind. Nina Patel leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. If you go public, he'll come for you harder than ever. Maya looked up, defiance burning. Then let him. I'd rather die fighting than live silenced. Papers fluttered in the draft, carrying the weight of betrayal and revelation. She met Daniel Cross again, this time armed with the truth. In his glass office high above the city, Maya slammed the folder on his desk. He's a fraud. If you keep backing him, you'll burn with him. Daniel arched an eyebrow, flipping through the pages. He smirked. You think this scares me? It excites me. Leverage like this can make kings fall. Maya's jaw tightened. Then help me expose him. His laugh echoed against the walls. Or, I could use this to own both of you. She realized too late, power was his only loyalty. Later, Maya sought out Richard Cole, her fallen mentor. The man who once ruled Wall Street now sat in a dingy apartment, whiskey bottle half empty. His eyes, weary but sharp, scanned the evidence. I warned you, Maya, he rasped. The game isn't fair, and the players never change. She asked, then why help me? He chuckled bitterly. Because Victor Hale burned me too. And if I can't win anymore, at least I can watch him lose. His words carried both wisdom and defeat, a warning and an offer. That night, Maya stood on her balcony, the city glittering below like a battlefield of broken dreams. Her hands clutched Samuel's evidence, wind tugging at the pages. She whispered, this is my weapon, my last chance. Fear coiled in her chest, but defiance roared louder. Somewhere in the skyline, Victor Hale celebrated his false victories, unaware his empire trembled. She thought of those who had lost everything because of him, the employees, the families, herself. Her voice hardened into a vow. Tomorrow I strike back. Lightning flickered on the horizon, echoing her resolve.